Hey guys, Anna here, and I have a fun 20-minute demo for you today. We're going to paint a snow-laden tree, and I'm going to keep it real simple for you guys. Just two colors. We're going to use black and white.
It's cold outside, but the fire keeps us warm. We can spend the night beneath the mistletoe. It's cold outside.
And I'll start my timer now. Alright, it's been snowmageddon here. I just dipped my brush in Gamsol, and my brush had some residual stuff on it from previous work today. But otherwise, you know, aside from this wet tone that I have on my canvas, wet meaning that I haven't allowed it to dry, and it's got a little bit of blue in it and a little bit of black. Other than that, I'm just using these two colors today. And part of the problem, or set of problems that need to be solved when you're working with black and white or with a tree like this, is do you start with your darks or do you start with your lights first? And I've tried it all different ways. I've tried to start with my middle values before. I've tried to start with just the lights or just the darks on a canvas that wasn't toned to see what would happen there. And I've found that there's really no wrong way to do it, but some ways seem to work better for me. And I prefer to actually start with my lights in a situation like this. So I do leave some space there for the darks that are going to be coming in eventually. But I'm actually blocking in first with my lights. And thankfully this tone seems to be just about perfect for kind of what I'm going for. That a little bit of contrast, just enough to see the shapes that I'm making and to create another value in there for me to reference. I have to be careful that this doesn't end up looking like a face. Sometimes with trees you start seeing noses and eyes and or arms and legs coming out from different places, and you have to be careful not to create a caricature of sorts. So I just wiped my brush, but I'm using the same brush, so it has a little bit of white still on it. And I'm going to go in and start putting in a couple of those darks. Now, right off the get-go, it looks like this dark that's in the center of the tree is right in the center of my canvas. And I'm not sure that I want that. So I'm going to relocate it just a little bit. Or perhaps change the shape of it so that it's not just a pinpoint dot in the center of my painting, which would look really unattractive. So I'll just change that shape, shift some things around a little bit. Still being somewhat true to my reference, although I don't necessarily have to be. If I decide I don't like that shape, I can change it. Or I could add another white branch coming down. These darks that I'm putting in are actually probably too dark already. Given that it was still snowing when I took my reference photo, it's actually still snowing right now, and it was a blizzard out there. There's a lot of atmosphere in the air, and everything is a much lighter value just overall because there's so much snow. So this is as dark as I would want to go in this painting. And what I'll probably end up doing is going in and softening some of that darkness with more lights as I come in, with more paint later on. It starts to take shape pretty quickly when you're not worried about color and just value and drawing and edges. boy, that color component can really complicate things, can't it? So it's kind of a nice change of pace, isn't it? Yeah, I don't like that shape, so that's gonna go away. We're just gonna add another branch right there. Cover that up. It was like a cyclops, a single eye in the middle of the tree, and I didn't like that. But isn't that the wonderful thing about painting things like trees or landscapes? You can change them however you want. Nature very seldom presents itself in a way that makes for a perfect picture or a perfect painting. And so that's where we get to jump in and choreograph our scenes and choreograph our setting a little bit more, customize it. I've started loading a lot more paint on here, and you can go every which way with the brush, but I have found that just kind of following the flow of that snow and the shape that's on top, the heaviest shape, heaviest feeling part of the shape, just kind of follow that direction that it's going, and that seems to make more sense than perhaps going cross contour or I mean, you could play around with using a palette knife here. So lots of different ways that you can load the paint on, but I still like my good old-fashioned paintbrush. I just find that I have a lot more control that way. Now here, when I look at my reference, the background snow is much lighter in value than the tree itself. So if I leave kind of an outline edge, or in this case, it would be the tone that's showing through, and just really load the paint on in the background, I can create that illusion of the tree itself and all the snow on it being darker than the background. How am I going to design my background? I haven't quite figured that out yet. But we've got time. We're less than halfway through. Lots of time to spare here. You'll notice I didn't put the top of the tree in the very center of the painting. I wanted to be careful about that. And right now I'm just walking my eye around the painting and trying to figure out if I like these shapes or if I need to adjust them in any way, or perhaps change the values. You can get really detailed and really subtle and nuanced even with a painting like this, which seems so simple and so straightforward, and yet, man, there's so many opportunities to learn as an artist. Like here, for example, this little branch that's hanging down sort of blends into the background behind it. They're the same value just about, except for the underside of that branch where we catch a little glimpse of the branches below the snow. And so, you know, things like that you can play around with and have a lot of fun with those shapes. And then if we start mixing up something in between our dark and our light, we get into these wonderful middle values, these middle value grays that happen everywhere. And let's just double check, that might be too dark. Here, for example, where the snow begins to slope down this shape here, the branch above it is casting a shadow, but it's a very gradual shadow, you know, because it's so overcast and the lighting is very subtle. We want to make sure that that gradient happens very gradually. Same with in here, and you'll notice I keep reloading my brush because it's not quite the right value. I don't want to put it up there if it's way too dark, because then I'm going to be trying to blend it into the paint, and I'm going to lose those whites. So, you know, the reason I start with my whites is because they come out of the tube in their purest form, right? And as soon as you mix other colors in, that's gone. And so I can see that happening already on this branch here as I'm trying to mix those grays into there. So it can go away pretty fast. That white loses its purity. And that's okay in this case because, like I said before, the tree itself is darker than the background behind it. And so adding these grays, I'm doing that on purpose. They're in there for a reason. But I still want to be careful not to lose all of my whites right away. I'll take a moment to wipe my brush again. And in fact, I might switch to my smaller brush at this point, as we're getting down to just under 10 minutes. I want to be careful not to get too detailed just yet. Even though it's only 20 minutes, I want to bring this painting to an overall level of completion over the whole canvas so that none of it looks like it's been neglected, if that makes sense. And it's okay to have some of that tone left over. I kind of like that actually for the background there. But as soon as I start putting in real small, subtle shapes, I need to make sure that I'm including those equally throughout the painting so that, like this bottom area, for example, feels very unfinished to me still. So let's not forget about that. And then of course the way the snow slopes up towards the tree. Snowbanks. This is the most snow we've gotten all year. And it's just amazing how it transforms an ordinary little tree in our neighbor's yard to this magical looking sculpture. I put that in there just as a point of entry into the painting, just to give it a little bit more visual interest. And I'm going to do the same thing up here with, I guess that would be the road in the background. Just to add some darks in there. Don't know if I like it yet. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. So it's kind of a costly experiment for this 20-minute painting. That's all right. That's what this is for. It's all an experiment and it's all for fun, right? I'm gonna keep it looking kind of hazy back there. All right, a couple little darks. We started this earlier on in the painting, and now I just want a few more little details. Because if all the brush strokes look big and equally shaped and about the same size, then it's not very interesting either. So we need a variety of shapes and sizes of our brush strokes. Especially with such a limited palette, black and white, man, it's got to be interesting. It's got to be able to grab our attention, hopefully as a thumbnail or from across the room. So here's where I like to kind of back up and have my brush fairly far away, like at arm's length, and start putting in some single sort of flowy brush strokes. I can't do that if I'm standing or sitting right up to the painting. It's almost impossible to do when you're that close to your painting. Try to get in and get out real fast and be decisive with those brush strokes. I know that's hard to do when you're feeling like you're under pressure and you're kind of under the gun and time's running out, but you know, that can be a real good thing actually. Because you're forced to not pick at it. You don't have time to pick at it. Picking at a painting at this point is a luxury. And it's not always in the painting's best interest. You know, someone actually commented on one of my other videos. They were like, you know, they made a really good point. They said, actually, one of the best purposes for this exercise is that so many artists don't know when to stop. They don't know when to call a painting done or when to just step back and let it be. Granted, I've looked at some of these that I've done and been like, oh, that could have really used some more time, but I keep getting closer, I think, to that goal of hopefully leaving it looking fresh and painterly without having overworked it. Couple more little smaller middle values. Break up some of those shapes a little bit. That one doesn't really interest me, so I want to knock that down. What else can we do with this? Maybe break that shape up a little. And then I want to unify these darks a little bit more down this side of the tree, so that it kind of flows all the way down. And then here we've got a little bit more of a snowbank or a shadow. It's not even really a shadow, that's the wrong word, but it's definitely darker value than the surrounding snow. Let's unify the lights at the top. Might need my smaller brush for that. I've got so much paint up there, it's starting to get a little muddy. So I just keep having to load more on top of it. Get some of that pure white back in a few places. No, I haven't painted every single branch. I've just kind of painted the ones that stood out to me and hoped to capture the rhythm of this tree and sort of the gesture of it. Because trees can have gestures just like people, just like figures. And this one is leaning a little bit, so I wanted to capture that lean. We could put suggestion of the fence in there. like that. Huh. It's funny how I'm less decisive with a black and white painting than I am with the ones in color. How funny. It's because the design is everything with this. You know, when it's black and white, that really matters. All right, and time is up. Well, what did I learn from this exercise? I learned that black and white is actually tougher to pull off than I thought. So I hope you'll give this one a try and see what you discover about values and edges, shapes and gestures, and whether or not you decide to keep going with it after 20 minutes or not. I leave that up to you. I might pick around at this one for a while longer and just see where I can take it. But for now, this is my 20-minute painting.